Om Om Ganganapate Namaha, Gangarabhyo Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatyaya Namaha, Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashvastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashranvanuti Visita Sadhanam of Sri Mahaganapataye Namaha, Om Namo Bhagavate Shivanandaya. Om Namah Shivaya, good evening, everyone. I really so excited to see some very lovely friends here. I want to salute you all one by one. I see the whoever pictures I see Catherine all the way from Midwest. Hello, time to go back there. I have a special camel. I'm going first to East Aurora, where my friend here, Janaki Susan Lash, is. So that's a kind of my, what do you call it? A tour, you know, like the Rolling Stones, they have the tour called 60s. So I have my own tour called Camel Tour. So I go around. Hopefully, with this COVID coming down, we can do some more in-person talks and things. I would really love to see everyone. I want to also greet Lucrezia from Mexico, all the way from Mexico. I met her only once here in New York City. I was giving some talks. She came, so happy to see you. And then I see Kelsey. I don't know, Kelsey, I think I may know you. I see you have some fancy guitar over there, so I'd like to try that out. Nothing serious, no Jimi Hendrix, only simple things. Then I have my good friend Bill. And then I have Corinne, who also has a name, Annapurna. Hello. Annapurna is a nutritionist, you can only imagine, feeding everybody more or less. And then, I don't know, there's somebody with a baby. Welcome into the team. Ratna Jyoti, I haven't seen you for a long time, so happy to see you. Welcome. And Janaki, who is the queen of East Aurora's Yoga Center, the main CEO of the Yoga Center in East Aurora, and the only CEO there. It's so wonderful. And then we have Sita. As you know, Sita is a very sweet little, wonderful love integration yoga guide. And she is kind of a, how would you say this, friend in criminal actions. Yeah. So Camila, and we also have Leela Lolling. She has several other names, Saraswati Devi. She is the main persona in a new world of eco yoga. So if anyone of you would like to come and be part of the eco consciousness, developing consciousness necessary through yoga, yogic methodology, how to become more responsible in the world, you have to work with Leela, a little bit Loling G, but we're all working together, by the way. So then we have Remy Watts, I think, Remy, and I have also my great friend here, Eduardo. I have to acknowledge your presence, people. I love you very much. And he's a very good friend of mine. He not pretending to be a student, but really we have some heavy duty discussions on Christianity and yoga. We don't know who is going to win. That's still in question. And then we have Lakshmi. I haven't seen you for a while. Louis Anne. I hope we pronounce it properly. Kind of one of those Irish names. Murphy. Yeah. And then thank you for coming. And Maria, I don't know if I know, hey, you look familiar. Yeah,
I'm in
somewhere.
Julie G's class in Cleveland, the new yoga
Oh,
class.
how sweet you joined us. Yes, that's where I recognize you. I thought I seen you somewhere. Live, Zoom, it's almost the same. It's becoming one reality now. Then we have, thank you for joining, Raymond Smith. And we've got Brian here, young Brian. I will answer your Sanskrit questions soon. Then some more people here. We have Alexandra. I don't know, Alexandra Sita is your people. No, your friend, Alexandra Ji. Then we have, who else do we have? So nobody else. So that's it. We're a good group, about 18, 19 people. So, you know, I love the subjects that deal with the mind and philosophy. And I wish I could just give one talk every day. You think for yourself? No, I think for myself. Whenever the talks are given, I'm the first one that benefits from them. I love to be also a listener of other people's talks. And I find that this kind of talks are very necessary for all of us because it allows us to basically rekindle the inspiration. right? So every time we hear, it could be in a single talk, it could be maybe a few sentences alone. They could be transformative seeds or seeds of transformation that if you take them in the right way and you apply them immediately, they can bring miracles in your life, you know? And because human beings were not learning very fast, we have to hear the same talks again and again and again. I promise I won't give exactly the same talk as last time for those who are in it, but I think some ideas may have to be repeated simply also because some of you were not here and some of you do not have this recording. So I'm going to start with this little subject. I'm going to change it to my speakers gallery so that I can, um, you know, just when it's recording the speaker mainly. I believe that's how it works. I may have to have some lessons by Leela. May. Hello, Amrita. I didn't see you. Okay, so we have to remember one thing. Uh, you can read a lot of books on habits. There's some pretty good books on how to develop habits, but a lot of these people are looking at habits from a very rational, from very psychological point of view. So they're not really touching on some other things which are very spiritual in nature, which I am going to do, but I may not touch on some very practical things that they will. So maybe what was thinking tonight is maybe to have a part 3 where we could just discuss the practical aspects of it and not go into any other things that I'm usually going to. Practical meaning really down step by step on doing things that should be done. For example, you have to raise the question here: are you trying to develop a good habit? Are you trying to remove a negative habit? See, if you're creating a good habit that doesn't have this counter habit already in your nature, then from that point of view, it's okay, it's easier. But if there is already something we're doing that is not really in accordance with what we would like to become or do, then um, that becomes more difficult and the path is different. And if you're building a very new habit that you just want to start, that is pretty simple, right? Because you're inspired, you don't have many obstructions or obstacles, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So now I want to remind you that in spiritual life, what we generally try to do is to set up a large or grand goal, right? So we call that the central idea. So you want to have a central idea. It is something like a big magnet that is pulling you towards. So for spiritual people, that is usually something of the highest reality. It's basically, you can call it God, self-realization, anything like this. But you may also um, you state that in a language that is more presentable to you. For example, some people want to become an embodiment of love or compassion, or for any of these qualities, and that can also be as if a reflection of the highest reality. You don't need to think of a highest reality at this point as some kind of a nebulous consciousness that has no forms, no names, and maybe too far to fetch for majority of people. So the principle is in life, if you don't have a central goal, that your mental, psychic, and other energies are not going to be organized in a proper way. There will be a lot of dissipation of energy if this is not set up. So the way to do this, you can either sit down and you can meditate on what is the purpose of my life, right? If you cannot really understand that, then you can also meditate on the potential problems that will arise in a course of one's life. For example, disappointments, losses, diseases, and death. So that's another type of meditation as Swami Shivananda recommends to spiritual aspirants in order to, you know, um, again, ignite or reignite that search for the highest goal. You see, if everything was comfortable, we would never make any effort, truly. If everything was just deliverable, where it is at the moment by Amazon and other things, at the little press of a button, right? You would not make any and much of an effort in your life. In fact, if you observe the whole creation, there's a spiritual truth in it that nothing lasts forever, right? And nothing lasting forever is the driving force behind the humanity to do the actions that they need to do. They may not be all spiritual, but eventually they're all going to become spiritual in its nature, because we're all part of one reality, and no part of the reality can isolate itself from the grand reality, which we may call God or consciousness or anything like that. So anyway, the first thing, if you're taking any notes tonight, or if you're thinking what to kind of try to remember, is to set up a central goal which needs to be meditated on every day, right? Because if I don't think of my central goal, I think about, you know, the being embodiment of this or that, or becoming, realized in this lifetime or enlightened once in a while, most of my energy is going to be going in all kinds of directions, but not in that particular direction, right? So even with us spiritual people, we're highly distracted. Don't think that the spiritual people, just because we have the spiritual path, we are actually not distracted. It's not true. We are, and this is exactly the reason why we have this kind of talks, is to remind ourselves on what we should do and how we can do it. So having a central goal, meaning having an all-consuming ideal that you want to follow and realize in this lifetime. It's an all-consuming, which means it's also all encompassing, meaning that everything you do, any action, any activity, any goal or sub goal that you set up, even the minor goals, of course, a part of it, they should be in they should be complementing to your highest goal, so that you don't have that you're not doing things without a larger purpose behind. I said this last time. If you're exercising, you're eating, what is the reason for it? So of course you can have different reasons. Generally people want to be healthy, but for spiritual aspirant, the health is only another means to something greater, right? Even to practicing compassion, even from that point of view. If you want to do good deeds, you have to be healthy. If you want to be bad deeds, you also have to be healthy. So the health becomes the primary focus for all spiritual aspirants. And some of us were really very lazy. I used to love a lot of tiramisus and stuff like this. So that's kind of eroded some of my spirituality too. So now, anyway, I take my little vows all the time, and don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Don't just have the vows of don'ts. Please also have the vows of do's, good do's, and not worry about just that I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't eat that and all that. We will come to it. I mean, if you want more precision in your spiritual life, then it's important to keep your spiritual diary. That's why Sita is very important here as a member of a CEO company. She's the CEO of Spiritual Diary here. So you need to discover the magic of keeping the spiritual diary. You need to develop the skill of doing it. It's just totally different from keeping a diary about how much gas you used, and how much food was used on any of that. To keep a spiritual diary is very it's in principle is very simple, but when you get to the detail and how to do certain things, you may need some help. But the keeping of the spiritual diary in itself is the help to yourself. That's your guru. At this point, you don't have a guru. Maybe you have somebody, but you don't have a teacher who's, available on the cell phone or social media or something like that. And you say, oh, I got this question. How do I deal with that? So you're your own teacher, but you cannot be your own teacher with the mind that is all over the place, dissipated here and there. You can only be your teacher when you factually approach your spiritual life. You say, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm not doing. And now if I'm not doing this, the question is why. And then after the question comes why, then how, and like this. We have these three questions like this in Sanskrit, Kim bhavayet, what should be done, then katam bhavayet, like this. This is a principle that comes from Vedic teachings. Katam bhavayet means how could be brought out to become. It's like, in anything, like, if you want to build a house, you need to have a plan, you have to think about this, then you need to do how to do it. But spiritual life, the mental life, which is a big part of spiritual life, is actually much more challenging uh, to build and create than it is anything else. So please always remember that. You know, you shouldn't never think, okay, oh, I know my mind very well, I don't need to keep the spiritual diary. Or you have other types of people who say, oh yeah, I keep the spiritual diary, but then I give it up, right? So that's what majority of people say. They're keeping a spiritual diary, but they give it up. Well, if you're giving it up, then you have not comprehended, why you should be keeping it. And just because the numbers are not great, you don't see some great progress in your life, it's not a reason to give up the diary. you know I, in my own spiritual diary, I have plenty of zeros left and right. So what? It's not a big deal. So you just these little zeros that you put down, they will also teach you something. So the secret of, obviously, of starting a journey of a changing of your habits, changing of the bad habits, right? Or giving them up, or creating the good habits, start by setting this idea of how to have a purposeful and meaningful life. And this is the most important thing. A life which is meaningful, which is selfless, which embodies a certain mission, and you're filled with the desire to accomplish it. So that the first central idea of having a purpose of meaningful, spiritually founded life, not to say that other people don't have a meaningful life, but spiritually founded, is the absolute necessity. It's the first key to opening the golden door, where you're going to find how to develop the healthiest habits you can. So this is the first thing. Now, all habits need discipline. Terrible word. Ooh. Negative habits are built through discipline also. And also the positive habits are also built through discipline, right? So all habits require that terrible word that scares all of us, called discipline. Why are we so scared of it? This is because we don't understand what it is. Um, there's a wonderful thing in the Proverbs. It says something like, hold firm to discipline and never let it go. Mm. Guard her well, guard discipline well, for she is your salvation, right? It's like in Gospels and Proverbs like that. Above all else, guard your heart, for therein is the source of life. This is what I just wanted to share with you. So the discipline, needs to be put in a modern language. I think the word in itself is very harsh, but you have something you want to attain, and the question is how, right? And what you want to attain is within the within something that you really love and that you desire with all your heart to attain and to become. So discipline generally involves a certain repetition, either of an exercise or principle. And then that repetition becomes more and more regular, and then it becomes almost meticulous until you have learned it well, right? And until that which you learn becomes part and parcel of your character. See, this like you're learning driving, right? So how do you learn to drive? In bits, you learn one action here, one action there. You look to the left, look to the right, whatever. So you have to start like that. Then, um, when that discipline is established, you will have it available at you. That skill, the practice, and you can easily pull it out. It's like a tool, so it's not something that it goes away. So if you're challenged by a temptation, that which you mastered will come up and protect you. So the very discipline is that which protects us. This is how we see it. This is why in Sanskrit there's a word shreyaha, which means good. But when it's analyzed, this word, it doesn't mean just good. It means that by which you are protected is good. right? So in what way you protect it? You can never be good without discipline. You see, like whatever goodness you carry came to you through some form of discipline, whether it was maybe you were helped out by your parents or your grandparents or somebody in the school or whatever, throughout your life by your partner or somebody. So many people, all our relationships are really meant to help us develop the discipline to the highest level. But I don't mean a military discipline with a very sullen kind of a look and eye steering and all that. Not that kind of a discipline, but it's just really moving, comprehending that everything in this life, every smallest event, even a smallest anything smallest, can actually help you get into a more harmonious state and more discipline if you know how to do it. So the discipline really consists in making the same step in a particular direction, right? But it also allows us to go higher than that. So this is what we want to do, is to concentrate tonight only for a few moments on this word discipline. The discipline is really a kind of a, a, a whole practice on which is based on harmonization of different kinds of forces and energies within us and outside of us. It's the harmonization of these powers and skills. And why, that's another important thing. You can have a discipline for many things, but here for spiritual realization. In fact, this needs to be said before we even tackle the habits, right? So you think about how much effort do people go through, how much discipline they do if they want to, let's say, climb a Mount Everest, right? So they have to spend years and years of training, knowing how to breathe at higher altitudes, how to walk, how to step here, how to build it. So many times, right? It's a discipline. Think about all these great players, whether basketball or anything, these people, they've been practicing from a young age and became master. They don't think, because now the habit has become the second nature. So if he has to, you know, pass on the ball and get whatever he has to do or she has to do, they do it because they actually had to discipline themselves. So every day they have to wake up and go and run and you know get the skills that they need to, but not without work. That's what, unfortunately, we given our time and our energy for developing many things in our life, but not for spiritual things. It's hard, right? You have to wake up in the morning, say Om Namah Shivaya mantra, Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha. It's hard, you do it 5 minutes and everything. I don't see the results. That's probably one of the reasons. When you practice sports, you see the results. In a spiritual life, it's not so easy to see immediate results. Anyway, I always want to remind you that you have that infinite potential in you, and you have to be aware of it, and you need to know how to live it, right? So you have to bring it out of yourself. And for one, we need to obviously first remind ourselves, as I said last time, on the attitude. The attitude towards building habits in spiritual life has to be different from the attitude that you have in learning different skills in schools and colleges and all that. So obviously, as I said before, in schools, you can, colleges, whatever, you can learn some things quite to a great detail, right? You repeat them and everything, you absorb them. But none of these details are necessary to you later on. None of the steps you need to repeat again and again and again. In the spiritual life, unfortunately or fortunately, on the contrary, everything is based on repetition, right? So every day we try to do same asanas. We go on to that mat, which is now sticky after 20 years of, doing the asanas. Especially if you put the oil in your hair or something, it's going to be even more interesting. So doing the asanas every day, but you're trying to go deeper into the asana. How do you go deeper into the asana? Well, that's a different story. But the idea is that we don't just give up the asanas because we've done them for 10 years or 15 years, right? We do the asanas, pranayama, and every other practice because first, they're the key to good health also. And the second thing is that they're part of our disciplined life. They harmonize different energies. They actually calm the mind. They bring, they awaken the energies. We know what happens in yoga. So I have to remember, I have to remind you of that all the time. Now, this mind, not just this mind of the speaker that is speaking, but your mind too, is simply a bundle of habits, right? It is through the evolution, through many lifetimes that we had, we became who we are now. We have bad habits, good habits. Hopefully, most of them are good and some probably bad, right? So, a lot of bad habits and prejudices that are hidden in one's nature, they will be necessarily be brought out when an opportunity comes. For example, for an angry person, if a temptation comes, anger will manifest. For a lustful person, if that such an opportunity comes up, it will come up. So it doesn't matter what it is. For somebody who sees somebody suffering, a good samskara impression will wake up and you will want to help. Nothing will stop you because even doing good for other people is the result. The tendency to do good things for other people is the result of that building that's been going on for a long, long time. So we're really product of a very long evolution, right? So all habits originate in the conscious mind. This is why all every possible building has to be done on a conscious level. And we must also take the greatest advantage of being conscious. This is something that we forget. We have this wonderful quality, wonderful opportunity, and we don't do it, unfortunately. So when these habits through conscious application, oh, sorry, when these actions through conscious application become more established, right? They're constantly repeated. Then they sink down into the subconscious mind. And at that point, they assume a form which is called samskara in Sanskrit. Samskara is an impression, right? So you have an impression of actions, which is called samskara. And then you also have impression of more subtle motives behind actions, which are desires. And the impression of these desires have a different name, has a different name, sorry. It's called the uh, vasana. So there's some kind of a similarity between them being the impressions, but at the same time, they're different because the vasanas have to do with that, which really motivates and kind of, in a negative sense, agitates the nature. In a positive sense, it also agitates you to look for self-realization of freedom from all pain in life. So it can be good and bad. Okay, so that's your second nature. So the habits are the second nature. What we call habits has a very different technical name here in yoga, but we can leave it. So though habit is a second nature, you can actually change habits. You can create new, healthy, better habits in your life. But I will have to say an important thing is that whatever you identify with, whatever action you do, leave some impression. These impressions, even when they're replaced by good habits, let's say negative habits, even when they're replaced by good habits, some they will still remain there, but they won't bother you. But they will be there in a kind of in a more subdued nature if you're cultivating continuously your positive habits. What I'm trying to say, when a good habit, let's say you've been drinking, not you have been, you were drinking, and now you decided not to drink anymore. So now the impressions of drinking are not going to be just erased like a simple thing. All you're doing is you're layering another level of habits over them. That's all. When you get to a higher state of meditation and samadhi, you're going to be burning off these things, so they will never be there, right? So this is how it is. Uh, it can be, every negative habit can be changed by positive, more agreeable, in principle nature, stronger nature. So you can, for example, um, change anything, as you know. You can, if you're waking up late, you can change that and try to wake up early. If you're, talking loudly, you can learn to talk less loudly, like that. You can actually change, even the Swami Shivananda says you can change even the mode or manner of your handwriting. For example, sometimes some of us tend to take notes very badly, very quickly, quite confused, right? Then you can also say, I'm going to take notes that can be read. This is my new practice. So you can also decide on writing your letters in a certain way. You can change it. It's just a habit, right? So if you change obviously your actions, you change your thoughts, you change your actions, obviously you will change your tendencies. Tendencies built into habits. Habit, as you know, built the character. So the character is like a sum up of all the things you do. And so basically you have to start from the thought level. Swami Shivananda says, from a higher perspective, you should also think that you're not always your body, not these thoughts, right? Daily, we should remind ourselves, yeah, there's these thoughts. I'm not these thoughts. You look at your body so many times in the mirror, you say, this is not good, that's not good. I got to fix this, I got to take Botox, that. And it's like, so you say, okay, I'm not the body. Like, so then instead of saying I'm not the body, you change it with the habit. I'm that supreme reality. I'm the Brahman, I'm the God. I am that divine spark. If you feel like bad to say I'm God, meaning that you're God for everybody, but you say, I am divine. This is a wonderful thing. So in your mind, you generate new impressions and new grooves in a sense, and that becomes your new reality, new person. So Swami Shivananda says that it would be good to um, understand that replacing specifically negative habits by positive will induce a form of an internal turmoil. Some fight will be there, right? And so the habits which form the character, which are maybe, let's say, negative by nature, we're talking no negative, positive, they're called swabhava. They're called the nature, the habit nature, swabhava. And you have a new how do you change your swabhava? Through the application of will. How do you exercise your will? By applying the action. That's the only secret. You don't think, oh, it would be nice if I had willpower to do this. No, you actually apply the action. It's in the action itself is the will. And you see, remember, the same will is responsible for doing negative things as it is for positive. You cannot do even negative things without the will behind them. So here we're going to use the will for positive things, of course. So that fight goes on for quite some time, and we need no worry about that. That is what's called the fight between swabhava, or the character that is made up of certain part of the character is made up of negative qualities, and also the positive, the will. So that's the little thing. Some habits, even small negative habits should be really worked with and eliminated, partly because they actually trap a huge amount of psychic energy. So there are people who are in habit always of scratching their hair or playing with their fingers or shaking the body whenever they're doing something, right? And now we have even the social media habits, which are very difficult to obviously remove, such as when you're eating, you really like to check your phone messages, you want to see who is liking you on a Facebook. Obviously, they're not thankfully there's still not that little symbol for dislike. That would be a problem. So for now we are just loved on the Facebook and we count that. So all of those pernicious little habits that are part of our nature should be really also worked with. Okay, so when the psychic energy is wasted on these smaller even habits, what happens is the habit by its nature traps the prana. Now you have to remember, prana is the psychic energy. It's the vital force. So wherever your thought moves, that's where your also psychic force moves. Like in Chinese medicine, you have that. You have the thought, and then the chi or psychic energy, and then you have circulation. Three things are connected like that. This is useful in a yoga class, right? But it's also here important because when uh, our negative habits, which are part of a lower mind, trapped at psychic energy, then the higher mind, which is a discriminative part of the mind, has no really uh, capacity or is not able to operate at that time as much. So, Swami Shivananda says to remind us that a genius is one who has 99% of inspiration and 1% of inspiration. Sorry, 1% of perspiration. So 99% is inspiration. You remember that's an important thing because that will help you build good habits. And naturally, if you're struggling with a lot of things in your life, like everybody does, maybe you're not struggling necessarily with material, financial, physical things, but everybody has their own little demons in their mind and everything. Never consider whatever your experience in your life is, never consider yourself to be really a failure in any particular, you know, aspect of your life. Do not trust this kind of a little voice that sometimes comes and it says, well, you're not made like those people who succeed, success is not for you, so you have to treat this as a trait, as traitors, this kind of thoughts, right? Just like when you have a thief in your house, you don't like have a dinner with them unless you realize so, but you kick them out, you say get out of here. So do not admit this kind of defeats and and the sense of failure, which is very much part of our almost collective kind of a consciousness in especially in our country here. And so I just want to remind you that really the true strength that you will have to build on is the strength of resolve or renewal. And you have to just believe that you are perfectly made for the place, for the place that you feel like you're just perfectly fitting that from a larger perspective. I wouldn't say from a human perspective people find good and bad in you, primarily bad if they see that you failed in something, but this is human nature. Divine nature doesn't really judge us by that. Divine nature, if it does judge us, but it doesn't in a human way, so to say, it judges by the effort that we make. So I want to remind you of that. So we start off with a little list of good habits, which we should develop, every one of us. Okay. First of all, the morning is the most important time. As I said before, getting up as early as possible is a good way to set up some foundation for your work in your daytime. And so the first thing in the morning is you should have a fundamental idea or principle that will guide your actions and your behavior throughout the day. Why? Because more than often is that as soon as people wake up, their minds are off in all directions, right? And even if they're able to, do their job properly, they remain in a dispersed state. And this is very harmful for their body and the mind. So the morning sadhana is the principal key to your development, which you already know, but you have to somehow create the link between the practices that you do in the morning and the rest of the day. And for that, you have to think of a fundamental idea that is going to link your actions. You may also, for that purpose, take some vow, like, okay, I will be more conscious of what of my thoughts, or I'll be more conscious of what I say. It could be specific like that, or it could be at specific times. So when you take vows, you cannot, only monks can take vows for whole day, but we ordinary people, we can only take vows only for a certain amount of time, because you can be distracted, you have to do so many things which requires 100% of your attention. You can't easily learn to observe your mind in those moments. So that's the first good habit you want to develop in the morning. You you fix some idea in your mind. This is going to be a goal, you can say. I'm going to run my day based on this idea. I will be an embodiment of compassion today. I will not judge anybody, right? So the judgment is always a big thing. Then the second good habit I would suggest is how you meet people. and how you meet animals, how you meet plants, if you want to go that far. So you want to exercise to learn to see all these beings in a new way, in a sacred way. For how long? At least for a moment, right? It might be challenging to do that with certain people, we know that. But just for a moment, you try to look beyond the form, right? The physical appearance, or beyond the social position, or whatever the level of education is, anything that is a label, right? We're not interested in. So we want to look at them in a way that we can see beyond the appearance and realize that the same thing that is the deepest in us that we love so dearly, which we call our life, but really it can be called God consciousness, any name you want to do it, is in these people too, is in these beings too, is in this creation too, like that. It's a habit. So one of the little habits I would say would be, you know, step out of your wherever you are and connect with nature, and look at the plant, look at the something, animal, sky. The best obviously is the sunrise, and try to think in that way. And then you're going to, as a result of it, you're going to reawaken something sacred in you, right? It is obvious that the way we see others is simply the reflection of how we see ourselves. If we do not make efforts to see ourselves as something which is beyond our own physical body and this troublesome mind, you know, then we will not be able to comprehend also other people's nature. In fact, the more we are in tune with that inner reality of ourselves, the more of an embracing that we become of our own problems, and trying to embrace the whole of our personality, not just certain parts, the more we'll be able to do with other people. And it's only in embracing of these kind of things, in accepting to be also part of your nature that you're working with, of course, is that you're going to be able to transform some negative habits. If there are elements in you that you're refusing to look at and you say, I don't like this in myself, you are not going to be able to transcend it, because that very habit will set up like a kick, back nature. It will have that nature. So so the next principle is this. To understand how to overcome negative habits, you have to actually contemplate something very important, and that is the difference between lower and higher minds. So I'm going to now share something with you just for fun, to pretend to be a teacher. And I'm going to show you this little thing. One moment. Okay, so what is this? That's a second. One moment. Something is playing here. Okay, now I got it. Desktop. Up, 1 second. Here we are. So you see, we got these two minds. They have like two voices in a sense. If you like to think in terms of gunas, the gunas are tamas and rajas. These are the gunas that trap us in this samsara. And then we have the sattva. Sattva guna is the quality of higher discrimination. It's that part of you that knows the truth, that is kind of pulling you towards the truth. So you can see the tamas and rajas, they are part of this lower mind. They're the forces that embody the mind, and they're creating a certain resistance. That is the true resistance that you feel in nature, especially when dealing with habits. Rajas creates a restlessness, and it tends to also create the excuses for breaking the good habits and continuing also the old ones. Now you can see here the thinking of the lower mind is pretty habit. There's all subconscious mind influence here, habitual, mechanical, reactive, emotional, instinctive, desire driven, like that, and past and future. So the lower mind sees through preconceived ideas and prejudices. This is an important to know, and it is error prone, it's deceptive, it's all these things that you see here. Now, here in Sattva Guna, you see that all the things you're trying to develop in spiritual life are obviously associated with development of awareness, being creative, staying in the moment, staying in the present moment, being responsive rather than, you know, just erratically going for, the stimulus, developing the discrimination. Eventually, when that is all established, then sattva manifests in is an intuition. Prior to it is simply reasoning. And so seeing things as they are. So taking all the labels off what we, you know, generally ascribe to people, events, all that. It's the part of the sattvic mind. In a way, you can say also like a being of a witness, right? So this part of our mind, in fact, is closer to consciousness itself. So this nature of the higher mind, as you can see, Swami Shivananda, these are his words, is characterized by the central unitary principle, uh, which sustains all life and which links itself with others with the bond of fellowship in a spirit of harmony and mutual help. It's a very aspect that also connects you with all. So he says here it's the instrument that examines whether our cognitive processes and our emotional and mental states are correct, arriving at the truth about the condition of the mind and giving the necessary steps required to improve it. Swami Shivananda says your higher mind is your friend and it's your philosopher and your guide. So this is what I wanted to show you because it's a nice thing to know when you're working with this mind. It's the lower mind will be the problem and you need to know what to expect there. So um, I'm going to take a few more minutes and then we will have to have a part 3 if you don't mind, but just for now, this is what we need to do. When you study the human nature, you will obviously be aware that there are certain tendencies that are so deeply ingrained in us that almost nothing can uproot them, right? That those are all over tendencies that we're aware of. You know, the other tendencies, uh, these are very hard to remove them, and the other tendencies require nourishment. So if you want to become a better person, have a satsanga, this and that, this is what you need to nourish. You need to encourage your mind to make efforts. With a lower mind, you do not need to encourage it to make any efforts. It will just run spontaneously. It's a force in itself, right? So for example, if you're hungry, you don't need to be reminded that you're hungry. But if you want to become more selfless, more uh, compassionate, more disciplined, you have to repeat. Remember the first word we said, it's based on repetition, and you also need to inspire yourself to do it. You need an encouragement. And of course, we're not going to go into why that is the way it is, but just to know that this is something you have to pay attention to when you're working with your negative habits. There will be a resistance, and you need to know where the resistance comes from. And then when we get to the actual steps, we can say, okay, this is what we do at the time of resistance. Another good habit, I want to just mention a few more good habits that one should try to develop. We can start from tomorrow, is to remain silent and tranquil, right? So we are all tossed sometimes by these winds of life, left and right. And even in the midst of these fluctuations that life brings, in the midst of a hustle and bustle of life, if you want to say, we need to learn to remain silent in within, in that inner being. And how do you do this? You can achieve this by simply studying, um, okay, developing a habit of studying your thoughts and feelings as they occur to you. So from time to time, you don't need to do this all the time, but hopefully you will be able to do it all the time. But from time to time, or several times a day, you stop and for a moment, you analyze what is taking place in my mind. What kind of thoughts do I have? Where do they come from? Do they come from this lower mind? Do they come from a higher mind? What kind of a vibration is generated in my mind at this very moment, right? And then what happens as soon as you notice even the slightest agitation, the slightest discord, what you need to learn is to react to it, meaning don't let it just go unnoticed. So that reacting to this kind of a agitations and things like that is the first step. So you have to do something about this. You have to do whatever it is in your power to in fact calm that agitation down. If it's an anger or jealousy, lust, or some kind of a desire to hurt somebody in some way. So that's what we're supposed to do. For example, as soon as you notice that you're feeling impatience, you're irritable, what happens, in fact, you have unfortunately allowed some disharmony to infiltrate you, to come deeply inside of you. So that now becomes a condition, to be noticed and then removed by whatever methods you're going to use it. So the first condition here is to actually remember to nurture only harmonious thoughts and feelings. So this is a habit I would like to recommend you do. Another habit is the habit of eating, yeah, which we do every day, right? So we often think of everything but the food. This is why um, we eat only the mechanical aspect of the food. This is said in the scriptures that the food has three parts. It has, just like a physical body, we have a physical body, we have astral body. The food has the astral body also. It doesn't exactly have the same kind of a, it has only the pranic body, but it has the subtle essences of all kinds. So if we are distracted when we eat, we are not going to be able to assimilate it. So some meditation on the food, this could be a different subject altogether, or different talk altogether, but it will be like that. Then when you eat food like that, with some more awareness and focus without looking at your phone or anything, you're going to feel more nurtured inside, and you're going to also feel more invigorated. So you will feel, okay, I've absorbed something from this food that is not purely mechanical, like, calcium, phosphorus, or whatever. So this way you can learn to harness these energies that can benefit you. But of course, the precondition is to learn to eat more a little bit in silence, or have just agreeable conversations around the table. This is kind of what we want to do. Now, some bad habits also. I want to mention a couple of more minutes. What I think we should try to do is one, um, a lot of people are way too inquisitive. Okay, they want to know everything. So they have a negative habit or wanting to be informed about everything, right? To touch on every subject, to be up to date with everything. So what happens is also is the case with spiritual people, right? Spiritual people have a tendency to study many multi-dimensional, uh, spiritual sciences, which is very confusing. So you have to study. I don't say don't study one thing or whatever, but too many things. Everybody wants to know everything about karmas and chakras and psychic bodies and kundalini awakening and astrology and this and that. And you have the short life, how much can you really uh, how much can you really master of something that you read? We cannot also rely on information from the books alone without the guidance of a living master for that purpose. But what happens then, this widespread habit of filling the mind with all kinds of knowledge, and sometimes even trivial information from the world, from the social network, like we do this often, um, is taking away from working on yourself. And another problem is if you have too many ideas from too many books, too many authors, and everything, you develop the same indigestion that the people develop when they eat too many different types of foods. Like, so that is one thing. Another habit that I think we should give up is this one. People are generally remembering when they think of their life, primarily the things that have made them suffer, right? If they had suffering in their life, that's kind of what they remember. Now, they carry these memories with them, and obviously they ruminate over them. But obviously the new habit that we should try to create is to, you want to look at some old events in your life, look at it, come up with some conclusion of what was to be learned from it, and then take just the commitment to not think of them, never back. Don't go back to them. So this is important. Try to instead, this is a new habit, try to remember the most joyful moments, or the most luminous, in fact, moments in your life when you had some revelations or some great joy or something like that. For example, we can think about how something happened and who was instrumental in bringing that kind of a experience for us about, right? So we want to bring this kind of events to our life and replay them like you replay a good song, well, Lady Gaga or something like that. And then you play your favorite music, and then you will relive this experiences, literally the sensations which are psychic in nature, of light and joy and other things. So you see, then next time we see each other, everybody will have a smile. This is the idea. So I will continue next time. We're going to do habit 3, I think, because there's not enough time to even cover in this whatever 1 hour 45 minutes anything. But I will be very happy if Sita, you would like to come in and say a few things. So I will stop recording this part, but we can have a little discussion for those people who want to stay on. One moment.